Example 2 on page 388 starts with saying write 3/8 as a percent. So in this case, the first thing we want to do is convert 3/8 into a decimal. Then we can do that by putting it into our calculator and saying, calculator, what is 3 divided by 8? And it's going to say 0.375. And then while we're in our calculator, we might as well just say, hey, let's take that 0.375 and multiply it times 100, and that will give us 37.5%. We could also have moved the decimal over if we wanted to, as in 1, 2, and it would still give us 37.5%. So a relatively simple example in converting fractions into percents, and it goes the same way every time. Take and use your calculator and do a division of the top divided by the bottom, and then multiply by 100, and you'll always get your percentage. Moving on to example 3 on the same page, 388. This time we're going to do percentages again, except in story problem form. According to the Office Management and Budget, in 1970, the U.S. government spent $82 billion for defense, when the total federal budget was $196 billion. 45 years later, in 2015, spending for defense was $598 billion, and the budget was $3.8 trillion, or $3,800 billion. What percent of the U.S. budget was spent on defense in 1970 and in 2015? All right, so we wanted to compare the part to the whole. So in 1970, there was $82 billion spent out of $196 billion. 1970. Then in 2015, the spending for defense was $598 billion out of $3,800 billion. So our first step is to go ahead and set up each of our fractions. Then we're going to use our calculator. We're going to convert each of these fractions to decimals, and then we'll convert each of those decimals to percentages. All right, 82 divided by 196. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the online calculator so you can see it here on my screen. If I say 82 divided by 196, enter, what we're going to get is 0.418367, etc. So let's move that here and write our answer down. 0.4183, and we could say 6, but that's 7. That's right after the 6 does affect the 6, and so we'll go ahead and make that a 7 as well. Typically, we want to get 5 decimal points here, and then we can say times 100 to give us our percent. So if I bring my calculator back on screen, you're going to see it here, and I can say times 100, and that turns into 41.837%. All right, so we've got that first comparison in 1970. And then in 2015, we have $598 billion against $3,800 billion. And so once again, let's bring up our calculator so that we can get some help here. I'm going ahead and clear this first. And then I'll say 598 divided by 3800. And that equals 0.15737. 0.15737. We'll multiply that times 100 to get our final answer here. 15.737%. So what the percent tells us is, though, even though we spent a lot more money, as in $598 billion for defense in the year 2015, it was actually a smaller percent of the overall budget than it was in 1970.